My next Patreon question is from Joseph, who wants me to compare two well-known animation directors. I happen to notice that you have similar thoughts on two notable animated movie directors, Ralph Bakshi and Don Bluth. Both of these men were prominent figures during the years when animation was going through a decline, the 1970s and 80s. And while both men made some movies you like, other movies they've done you don't care for. But even when both men made movies you liked, you just like them, not love them. And the movies from both men just don't do much for you. You also seem to be fascinated by their non-movie work, such as shorts, TV shows, and video games. Which of these two animated movie directors do you think is better, Ralph Bakshi or Don Bluth? That's quite the comparison, as both directors have led interesting careers with their occasional ups and downs. While not necessarily among my favorite animation directors, they are unquestionably talented with their own aspirations and goals. Looking at that overall output, I would say I have a bit more of a preference for Ralph Bakshi. Part of the reason for my decision is Bakshi seems to be more adventurous in his film projects, and I also prefer more of his work over Bluth's. Fritz the Cat is of course a pivotal work. While not the first adult animated feature, his tenacity to get that film made and bring the counterculture movement to animation led to a humorous and creative film that has mostly held up. I think Bakshi's foray into fantasy showed he was a filmmaker who was not interested in merely repeating himself. I think The Lord of the Rings was a well-made adaptation of Tolkien's famous book trilogy. Well, half of it, anyway. And I've often wondered how he would have tackled the rest of the story had he been up for it. Wizards was a fascinating take on the fantasy genre too, with some biting social commentary. Bakshi's stories did have a tendency of being messy, as he had so many ideas and messages he wanted to convey, but working in fantasy allowed him to better focus his themes. I think that's also why his short-lived HBO animated series Spicy City worked, as each episode sought to present a different commentary on the seedier parts of society, and he was confined to a 25-minute runtime rather than feature length. It's also fitting I compare these two filmmakers, as Bakshi once said about Don Bluth that you don't leave Disney to do Disney. When Bluth famously left Disney in the late 1970s, it came out of a desire to make animated films closer to what he viewed as the classic Disney style of storytelling, works like Snow White and Bambi as opposed to Robin Hood and the Rescuers. The Secret of Nim was a noble first attempt on Bluth's part, and his independent short, Banjo the Woodpile Cat, also showed he was an artist with the talent to trek out on his own. His video game Dragon's Lair proved he had the ability to take animation in interesting new directions, but I think his biggest coup was collaborating with Steven Spielberg on An American Tail and The Land Before Time. An American Tail is, in my opinion, Bluth's best film, due to how it successfully combined both directors' strong qualities. Bluth's eye for good animation and creating likable animal protagonists, and Spielberg's penchant for wide-eyed sentiment and awe of the larger world we live in. It's also why I think the biggest mistake Bluth made in his career was parting ways with Spielberg. While they had creative disagreements on Land Before Time, Spielberg still brought and enhanced Bluth's best qualities. I know All Dogs Go to Heaven has its fans, but that movie doesn't do much for me, and things only seem to get worse with Bluth with projects like Thumbelina and A Troll in Central Park. I doubt he would have directed those films if he was still part of the Amblin team. With Disney experiencing a swing of incredible popularity and movie theater dominance again in the 90s, Bluth unexpectedly found himself competing against his former employer. Thumbelina seemed to follow the Disney fairytale musical formula closely, while Anastasia was such a copy of their 90s animated films, it almost felt like Bluth saying, well, you win Disney, if you can't beat them, join them. I do think Titan AE is the most interesting of Bluth's later projects. While not a great film, it was such a departure from his usual work, and it was fascinating to see him change gears and direct a Star Wars-esque space adventure, with screenwriter Joss Whedon contributing a bit of a Firefly influence before that show was even on the air. However I feel about their overall filmographies, Bakshi and Bluth did bring some things to the animation table worth remembering. Let me know who you prefer, and thank you for your question, Joseph.